I want to let you know about the Foundation for Applied Conservative Leadership mission. Number one, we want to help and train activists on really what the real nature of politics is, what politics really is, and the nature of politicians. They are very interesting creatures, politicians. And do I have any hunters in the room? A few of you, okay. So you know as a hunter that you've got to know a little bit about your prey, right? You've got to learn about the nature of, say, deer. You've got to learn where they like to hang out, what they like to eat, where they might travel back and forth. And so that first piece of our mission is about training you the nature of politicians so that you can hunt, figuratively speaking, of course, right? So number two is about showing you just how much power you actually have as an individual in your area. Okay, we want you to understand that and help you to understand that by implementing the right tactics, you can do huge things. And the people here today are examples of that. And they're going to give you concrete examples of what they've been doing, and I hope truly inspire you. Number three, we want to teach you that you can control the political environment. You can control your area and you can create conditions in your area that are going to produce more liberty and help you reclaim your freedoms. This Sunday, we'll be having a one-day political leadership school. This Sunday from 9 to 5, it's going to be right here. The things that you hear today are going to be people that are implementing the model. They're implementing the correct tactics that must be put in place to be successful in politics. So if you're interested today and you hear these stories and you're inspired, I would really encourage you to attend that one-day political leadership school. And if you're interested and you want more information, look for people that have the speaker tag on their badge and harass them and talk to them and say, hey, I'm interested in this one-day school. I'd like to go to it, and any of us can give you information on that. So with that, I would like to start off with our speakers. Our first speaker today is Kathy Ide, who operates in Wyoming. She's the Wyoming County Coordinator for the Campaign for Liberty. She's been doing tremendous work. Today she's going to talk with you about the work that she did to hold her governor accountable. And as I like to say, body slam politicians in her area. So, and she's also been involved with the Republican Party, very heavily involved in her local Republican Party, causing problems and delivering pain to politicians. So with that, I'm honored to introduce Kathy Ide.
Thank you. Kathy Ide, Natrona County, that's in Casper, Wyoming. And our county group is only about 9 months old, so we're just beginners. But in January of this year, January 16th was supposed to be our very first meeting. And literally 4 days before our meeting, we got wind that our city council, Joint Powers Board, they were asking for $5 million from a state land and investment board. And this $5 million was to go to actually help a group of local private developers. And one of them was is a multi-million dollar oil tycoon. And it was supposedly for infrastructure in a new convention center and hotel complex that they were going to be building by the private developers. And so we really didn't have much time before our meeting, but my husband and I contacted about 30 people that we knew were liberty-minded individuals. And we made phone calls and sent emails out, and asking them to call the governor and the whole board, the state board that would be voting on this $5 million, to ask them to have the governor vote no. And so probably out of the 30 people we contacted, maybe 15 of them called. But those 15, I mean, they really made an impression. And when the vote came up that day, January 16th, They voted it down 4-1, and the city and county were absolutely just dismayed. They thought it was a slam dunk that they were going to get this $5 million. And so we were all excited for our very first meeting. We sort of had, celebrated our first little victory. And a couple weeks later, the governor decided to have a rehearing because our city officials were just absolutely furious that they did not receive that money. And he stated that it was just because of a misunderstanding of the board. So they called another meeting, and we went down and spoke before the governor, and they ended up doing a revote. And they did change. We lost that round. It was 4-1. But the good part is this: the original request was for $5 million, and instead what they received was a $2.5 million loan. So even though it was a partial victory, it really gave our group courage. And just 3 months later, there was another issue that came up, and it was a $33 million school bond special election vote. And we gathered our troops together on that one, and we actually defeated the $33 million vote. So with a pretty small group of people, we're making a little bit of a difference. So that's it.
Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you.
Our next speaker today is from Northern Alabama. His name's Matthew Sorrell. He is a businessman. He and his brother own a bookstore, and now he and his brother and a friend are working on a pawn shop. But you know what? They're really concerned about their liberties, even in Alabama. I mean, who would have thought even in a red state our liberties could be under fire, right? So Sorrell's doing great work, and he's here today to talk about what he and his brother and his good friend are working on with taking over the local GOP and causing major pain to the establishment. So with that, I hope you could welcome Matthew Sorrell.
Thank you. As he says, I'm from Northwest Alabama, and yes, Alabama is a deep red state, but the county we live in, other than the counties that are dominated by black voters, this is one of the few remaining Democrat strongholds in the state, so it's maybe one of the tougher places to live. It doesn't have to stay that way. Candidates typically are getting 45 to 50% of the vote. One guy lost a state house, or maybe it was a Senate race, by a couple hundred votes a few years ago. So it's close, but without a little reform, the local party was probably not going to be able to pull it off. It's aggravating to be that close, but what they needed was a fresh jolt of some energy, some new activists, enough people to get those votes that are going to be required to win and bring it under Republican control. So I started attending party meetings, and after a while it became obvious to me that the leadership needed a change. They had put this one fella in office as the chairman that just really didn't suit the task, bless his heart. So poor fella, sometimes you can promote people beyond what they're really able to do. So in a sane world, you could go in there and say, I'd like to help you. I'm a Republican, always been a Republican voter. But when you start to get in there and actually be a threat to their power, no matter how poorly they may be running the thing, there's resistance. So in our case, they were convinced that we were young liberals out to take over the party, and that's not the truth. We're very staunch conservatives. So they did a variety of things, including rigging up the ballot to where they had us in such a bad position. They took this one fellow he's 80 years old. He's been in the party. He may have started the local organization 20 or 30 years ago. Fairly well known in the community. They ran him against a couple of people that we had recruited, some young kids that weren't well known. And the objective was for the old fellow to win and our two guys to get knocked off. And then they would take other people that agreed with us And by the way, these were not all young people that we were running. There's people from a range of ages. But they would take two people that they thought were on our side and run them against each other so that one of them would have to lose, and they would cut our numbers down that way. So they've got the ballots set about a month out from the election. We're sitting there, and we've got the way the ballot is all set up. We are supposed to lose, and we're going to lose pretty bad. We're probably going to get maybe 10 seats out of the 25 at best. So we held a little council of war and decided that for some of their shenanigans, there had to be some pain, you know. And our best quickest opportunity was to win some elections. We could, you know, maybe hang around and win by a war of attrition. People come and go in these parties. They get interested for a while, they run for office, they lose. A couple years later, they're gone, you never hear from them again. We would have been willing to hang around and fight that war of attrition and gradually add some of our members to the ranks. But we opted instead for the quicker opportunity at the primary. So one of the things we did, we got this idea from Dave Pridgeon and Ted, who are our mentors. We got a slate of candidates printed up on a card, got them endorsed by Alabama Christian Citizens, which has been endorsing people for a long time down there, and it worked very well. We live in a very socially conservative area. Rick Santorum won our county in the primary with 42% of the vote. So those are the kind of voters that are Republicans in our area. And as people come up to go in, as long as you're beyond 30 feet from the entrance in Alabama, you can do this. You hand them a card and say, hey, could I give you some suggestions for people to vote for executive committee? Many of them never heard of executive committee or central committee. They don't know what it is. If you're a nice guy and you can explain what the function of it is and how the party works and why you want these people to be elected, which in our case was these are good ethical people and they're conservative, and of the people that are running, they're likely to bring a more energy into the party, which means the party's more likely to win in our area. Well, obviously primary voters are going to eat that up. They want their party to win. Primary voters are the most dedicated of your base. So we stood out there and people would go in and check probably the whole card, you know, so there's maybe 15 people. So you could hand them one card and get 15 votes for a list of candidates. So at the end of the day, we went to the courthouse and there were some funny races. A couple people we recruited from the Tea Party won big. This one lady won 77-23, and it wasn't our efforts so much as she was just way better known. Name identification plays a big role. Then the 80-year-old guy, he wound up getting into a runoff. I was actually running against him in a state race, which he lost to his great surprise. So some funny stuff. So as far as how you could duplicate this, you're going to need a few $1,000. You need some volunteers. For instance, the second time, my brother got into a runoff, and there was one other race. So we took about 16 volunteers to the polls the next time. We had people out there, some out there from 7 a.m. till 7 p.m. Fortunately, it was a cool day in Alabama, or some of them would have died of heat stroke. But so when you got 16 people out there handing out stuff, you can really rack up the votes. And my brother won his race 62-38%, won by 800 votes. He had only beat that guy in the primary by 70 votes. So there are opportunities out there, and we've thrown the chairman out. We've elected somebody new. We've got our person in as vice chairman. So there are opportunities to work within the party and pick up seats and change the character of the party.
And another plug for our upcoming one-day school. Matthew is a graduate of our one-day school, and he's been implementing the model of confrontation and mobilization in his local area. So again, I'd really encourage you. This Sunday, our one-day school is coming up from 9 to 5 right here, and anyone with a speaker badge, harass them, and they can give you information about this school. Our last speaker today, I don't even know how to introduce him. He's a general. This is a guy that when he walks into the room with the other politicians, they start shivering. Okay, they don't know what Sean's going to do to them next. He's the Arizona Campaign for Liberty coordinator. He's involved in a number of conspiracies, as I call them. He is a political operative, and he is literally putting crony capitalists every day out of business, okay? Anyone here oppose speed cameras and red light cameras? I actually misspoke on that, speed scammers and red light scammers, but this man is putting these guys out of business and throwing them out of different states. So with that, I want to introduce Sean Dow.
That was cool. That's probably the best intro I've ever gotten. The truth of the matter is basically I'm a nobody. I didn't know what I was doing. But I took this one-day class. They brought me down to Galveston, to Texas, and they taught me the tools on how to be effective in politics. And I went home, and I started looking around for a nail to hammer. I wanted to figure out something to do. Well, I found these unconstitutional cameras. And so I said, well, this is something I can do in my local area. So me and two of my friends got together, and we started planning and plotting on how we were going to get these cameras ripped out. And we went and we used the tools that we learned in these one-day classes, and we put them to use, and they worked. All of a sudden, they were tearing down the cameras in my city and the city next to us. And we started running around the state, and we started tearing them down in every city. And every city that we went to, we removed bad politicians. We got them thrown out of office, and we got good guys who believed in liberty and who believed in the Constitution elected to office. And all of a sudden, things started changing. And then I started running around outside of Arizona. I'd go to Texas, and I went to Texas and Houston, and we started fighting there. And then I started going to all these other states. And every week I'm going to a different state, ripping these cameras down, using the tactics and the tools that I learned in these one-day class. This stuff works. It really does. You can remove bad politicians from office. You can change what's happening in your local government, in your state government, in your country. All of a sudden now, Arizona is a bastion of liberty and freedom. We've gotten to change so many laws. Not only have we ripped out the red light cameras, but we've been cutting their tax increases like crazy. We've been cutting all the property taxes. We've been beating down their big government spending packages. We changed Arizona to a constitutional carry state. Now Arizona is one of the strongest states for the Second Amendment in the country. This is something that three friends who got together in Arizona and put the tools that we learned in this one-day school together, put them into use, started kicking out bad politicians. They're losing their jobs left and right. And all I can do is go, good, good. Now all they talk about is liberty and freedom and the Constitution. Everything that I believe wholeheartedly in, everything that I got mad about what my country was changing, we are now fixing. You can do this. I'm nobody. I never did anything like this before. You can do this. Get together with a couple of your friends. Sign up for that one-day school if you haven't already done it. Learn how to be effective in politics, how to get these bad politicians out of office and get good guys in. You'll have more fun than you'll ever imagine. I've never had more fun in my life. The last 5 years of doing this, I have been just on a cloud nine. Every day is like Christmas to me. You can do this too. Thank you, guys. Have fun.
You know, and if Sean's experience isn't enough, this man teaches one-day schools for faculty. So if you're hearing what Sean's saying and you're interested in sorry, I have some feedback here. If you're interested in what Sean's saying and you want him to come to your local area, contact us. Again, harass the people with these speaker badges, and we can organize a one-day school in your area. We'll go anywhere in the country if you can get 25 activists in the room for a one-day school. So please come this weekend on Sunday if you can. Please see me about getting a ticket for the one-day school, but if you can't, consider organizing one in your area. We'd love to help you. We'd love to be party to new conspiracies. I'll close with this. We have a new follow-up program with the Foundation for Applied Conservative Leadership, and that's where we mentor activists from around the country. Campaign for Liberty leaders, other local liberty leaders. So if you're here today and you're struggling, if you're trying to implement tactics, if you're trying to deliver political pain to politicians and you could use a little help, a little mentoring, if you'd like to pick our brains about strategy, please contact me. We would love to help you out and get you going. So with that, I will close, and I really appreciate your time. And could we give one more round of applause to our panelists? Thank you.